What if the thing you've been calling your deepest wound is actually God's most personal message to you? You've sat in those rooms, the ones full of people raising their hands, speaking about clear signs and divine confirmations as casually as reading a text message. And somewhere in the back of that experience, a quiet but persistent thought, maybe he speaks to everyone, except me. You've read the scriptures about his voice. You've heard the sermons about his whispers. You walked out still carrying exactly what you walked in with. And if that's been your experience, not occasional doubt, but a chronic sense that heaven has a different number for you than it has for everyone else, then what I'm about to say matters more than another list of spiritual tips. Because here's what no one is telling the person who grew up without a safe home, who learned early that love had conditions, who carries the specific weight of abandonment or rejection in a way that shaped everything: how you read people, how you interpret silence, how you approach anything that asks you to trust. Those wounds didn't make you harder to reach. They made you easier to reach in ways most people can't access. And the reason you haven't recognized the signs God is speaking to you yet isn't because you've been spiritually absent. It's because you were never given the translation. Every day you interpret his voice as just more emotional noise is another day you walk past a direction placed specifically for you. So stay with me. The first sign. There is an ache that doesn't go away when circumstances improve. You get the stability, the relationship, the quiet apartment, and it's still there, sitting somewhere behind your sternum, pointing nowhere you can name. Not sadness exactly, more like homesickness for a place you've never been. Most people are told this is anxiety or dissatisfaction or something to outgrow. But that specific longing, the one that nothing quite satisfies, is one of the clearest signs God is speaking to you directly. Isaiah 26 contains a line rarely preached. Lord, your hand is lifted high, but they do not see it. God doesn't stop reaching when we stop looking. That cavity in your chest, shaped like something you can't name, is shaped exactly like the Father's presence. The Holy Spirit doesn't always arrive as information. Sometimes he arrives as a hunger that nothing else fills until you stop searching in all the wrong places. The second sign. People who grew up in unpredictable homes develop a precise radar. You read rooms, you catch tension before it becomes a storm, you notice what others miss entirely. Now, here is the sign when the same door you were afraid of opens again, when the same kind of invitation returns, differently worded, when the same pattern that has followed you your whole life aligns in a way that makes no logical sense without someone arranging it. That is not your trauma recycling itself. That is divine insistence. God speaking to someone who learned very young to pay attention to repetition, using the exact language your nervous system already understands. He doesn't broadcast to the general public and hope you catch it. He uses the frequency you were already tuned to hear. The third sign. You're not in a spiritual setting, you're somewhere completely ordinary, and a sentence stops you not because it's clever, but because it reaches a place that hasn't been touched in years. That is the Holy Spirit reaching into the exact frequency of your particular pain and placing a word there with a precision no coincidence could replicate. He knows you don't respond to generic announcements made at a distance, so he reaches you in the specific register where it actually hurt. That internal stopping, that sensation of being found, is not an emotional reaction. That is God's voice arriving at the address he's known all along. And now I need to stop and say something most people have never heard directed at them. The wounds you carry are not obstacles to hearing God's voice. They are the very architecture through which he most naturally speaks to you. Think about acoustics. A room with hard, empty walls echoes better than a room full of soft furniture and noise. The spaces inside you where love should have been but wasn't, those aren't hollow voids. They are echo chambers. The absence that felt like abandonment created a space that now amplifies divine sound in a way that people who never lived through that kind of loss simply cannot access as easily. You were never spiritually deaf. You were tuned to a frequency that most people never have to find. The fourth sign. People who survived chaos learn to distrust peace because peace never lasted before something broke it. So when an unexplainable calm arrives in the middle of something that should terrify you, the instinct is to wait for what's coming to destroy it. But that steadiness, the one that makes no logical sense given your circumstances, is the Holy Spirit entering the room you never learned to lock from the inside. Because you had to survive so much so young, you never built the emotional walls that block most people from experiencing his presence directly. That calm, arriving precisely when it shouldn't, is one of the most specific signs God is speaking to you right now. The fifth sign. In 1 Kings 19, after Elijah ran until he couldn't anymore and asked God to let him die, an angel appeared. Not with theology, not with a plan, just bread and a single sentence. The journey is too great for you. That's it. When someone appears in your life and their presence speaks to the specific exhaustion you've been hiding, when they see what you never had to explain, that is not coincidence. That is God sending a messenger who speaks the dialect of your particular kind of tired. You'll recognize them not because they try to fix you, but because for the first time in a long time, they simply see you. And being seen by the right person at the right moment with the right words, that is never accidental. The sixth sign. There is a moment, it might last only seconds, where you don't think you are seen. You know you are seen, not for your performance, not for your pain, but for what you actually are beneath both. This moment arrives without warning and leaves something behind it that feels like being addressed by your actual name, not the name your wounds gave you, not the name the absence gave you. The Father has been saying this name since before anything in your story went wrong. When that recognition arrives, and it will, you'll know it not because it's emotional, but because for the first time in a long time, it's quiet enough inside you to hear something true. And here is what all 6 signs are pointing to, the reason this matters more than a spiritual checklist. People with broken histories struggle most to recognize when God is speaking to them, not because he speaks less to them, but because they were taught by experience that love comes with conditions, that presence has expiration dates, and that safety is temporary. So when the Holy Spirit approaches without conditions, without an agenda, without the expiration date, when his voice comes as recognition rather than requirement, the very mechanism that protected you rejects it as too good to be real. You weren't missing the signs. You were protecting yourself from them. But the signs were always there, in every ache without an address, in every pattern that refused to stop repeating, in every word that landed like a letter with your name on it, in every moment of impossible calm, in every person who arrived when they shouldn't have, in every second where something inside you went quiet enough to hear something true. He built those chambers knowing one day his voice would fill them. You are not someone who has been missing God's voice. You are someone who needed a translation. Your sensitivity is not damage. Your pattern recognition is not a wound to outgrow. Your depth of longing is not evidence of something broken. These are the exact faculties the Holy Spirit uses to reach someone with your specific history. The people who heal the fastest are not the ones with the easiest past. They are the ones who finally learn to recognize the voice that was always speaking into their hardest places. You just learn to recognize it. There is one more thing about that last sign, the moment of being called by your real name, that changes everything about how you move forward from here. Because once you've heard it, even once, it recalibrates how you interpret everything that comes after. And the next time we walk through this together, that's exactly where we're going.